Welcome to Palace Off the Top Rope presents SmackDown. On today's episode, we're going to be covering the second edition, which was basically the network premiere. So in WWE history, when they go back to explaining to you the origins of this show, they'll probably start with this one, which took place on August 26, 1999. I already did a previous episode, which was the pilot. A couple of months have passed since then. I didn't think I would get to this episode really quickly, but I was able to breeze through mostly what I've been binging. I remembered mostly a lot of what I've watched from July through early August of 1999 in WWE, WCW. So I was able to get to this episode of SmackDown earlier. I watched it last night. And I've got my review on it, and I want to run through the show with you. So let's get started, shall we? So this is the episode that's following SummerSlam 99 and obviously Raw. So the show opens up with highlights of Triple H's journey to the WWE title. So a little bit of a backstory. At SummerSlam, Stone Cold Steve Austin defended the WWE title in a triple threat match against Mankind and Triple H. Mankind ended up sneaking up through the back door, as JR likes to say in his commentary, and won the title. So the next night on Raw is basically, Triple H going through, extremes to just get a championship match, all the way up to breaking JR's arm to get it. He does get it for Mankind, who, gives him the championship match. Shane McMahon's the guest referee, and all these things happen. And Triple H ends up the new WWE champion by the end of that episode. And that's basically what the montage recaps in this whole thing. So, Kansas City, the Kemper Arena, is the host of this episode, which is a little bit strange because it's not even 3 months passing since Owen Hart, tragically died at a pay-per-view event that they had in that very same arena just not that long ago. So it's a little strange for them to be running that arena really quickly again. I figured, I don't want to say it's disrespect, but, I don't know, just wait a little bit before you go back to that arena. I mean, not that there's bad mojo or anything, but it's just, think of his family, or think of the superstars just going back into that arena and just having to relive everything that happened that night. And I'm pretty sure that happened for a lot of the superstars back in the day, because they were close with Owen Hart. So them being back there is just, I don't know. I saw it on because usually when SmackDown opens, they tell you the city that they're in. And right when it said Kansas City, I was like, holy cow, it's August. They were just there in May for that event where that tragedy happened. So that was weird, but that's just me, and those are just my thoughts on that. So the show opens up with Triple H coming out with Chyna. This is basically a promo just bragging about how he's the WWE champion. We're basically just he's recapping everything that we just saw in the video package. So that was kind of redundant. The Rock comes out for an interruption, challenges for the championship. Triple H says he's nowhere near his league, doesn't want to give him the title match. This brings out WWE Commissioner Shawn Michaels, who says Triple H will be defending the championship against The Rock. And just to make sure there's no shenanigans, he himself is going to be the guest referee. This prompts out Shane McMahon out of nowhere. It looks like he came from the crowd, or I don't know what. Because it's weird, because they just cut. Usually they have people's music and then they come out through the entrance and whatnot. But Shane McMahon for some reason just appears in the ring. I don't know if this was something, because this was a taped show. They didn't do this live, and this is going to be happening for SmackDown for a majority of its early run up until 2016. Oh, I shouldn't say early run. Mostly, I mean, they went live a couple of times throughout the years, but for a majority of the time, SmackDown is a taped show. It's not like Monday Night Raw where it's live every week, at least in the more recent years. I know a couple of times in the Attitude Era it would be taped. But, so I don't know if this was a weird edit or if that's just the way they shot it. But anyway, Shane McMahon is just apparently in the ring and saying, no, you know what? He's going to assign himself as the second guest referee in this match. But since Shawn Michaels has all the stroke in the company, is able to do whatever he wants as far as making matches with the superstars, he says that Shane McMahon is not going to be able to referee because he's going to be busy. Shawn Michaels says he was really impressed with Shane at SummerSlam in his match against Test in the Love Her or Leave Her Greenwich Street fight. So he now considers Shane to be also a WWE superstar, which means he can book him in a match. So what he does is book him in a match against the guy that he screwed over Monday to lose the championship, which is Mankind. So again, there's a lot of continuity here and a lot of storylines running close together, which is, again, one of the major things that I love about the Attitude Era. It's not the violence, it's not the language, it's not any of that stuff. It's the continuity and storylines and everything running, crisscrossing and people crossing paths, but it's all, making sense. It's all coherent. It's all consistent. So that sets up that. It's going to be Shane McMahon versus Mankind later on in the evening. There's a little bit of banter going on between The Rock and Mankind. You're kind of seeing the beginnings of the Rock and Sock connection, which we're going to see develop throughout the months go by. In the rest of 1999. So he comes out, right, because he's announced as Shane McMahon's opponent. The Rock has had enough of the banter. Both him and Mankind head into the ring. It turns into a brawl between all four men, Shane, Triple H, The Rock, Mankind. The Mean Street Posse shows up in this, but they get destroyed by The Rock and Mankind. And that is the end of that segment. Now, let's take a quick break here because I started off pretty fast here. So those are the beginnings of this episode. And when we come back, I'm going to dive into the rest of this episode on Palace Off the Top Rope presents SmackDown, August 26, 1999. Stay tuned.
Oh, hell yeah. You can't see me! She's out, Doc.
I-O-N. Submission.
This is great. This is awesome. And it's boom drop time for Kofi. With an RKO out of nowhere. All hail the queen. Woo! What is this maniac doing? The dead man has risen. Oh, no. What is that smell? If you smell what the Rock is cooking. Champion! We got a new champion!
Welcome back. So let's get through the rest of this episode, shall we? So we finished up with the promo with Triple H. So they went to commercial break. When we come back, it is now going to be Jeff Jarrett alongside Deborah and Miss Kitty, who was introduced on Monday night, who's going to be competing against Badass Billy Gunn in a non-title match. Jeff Jarrett is the Intercontinental Champion. A little bit of the match story here. Basically, on Monday night, Jeff Jarrett put out a open contract on anybody can challenge him for the Intercontinental Championship. So this led to a backstage segment between Billy Gunn and Chyna, and Billy Gunn was looking for a pen because he wanted to sign that contract, couldn't find one, so he was out to go look for one. Chyna immediately had one on her, and this was after Billy Gunn had left, so she signed the contract, and that led to that. So that led to a confrontation in the ring between Chyna and Jeff Jarrett, and he blasted her with a guitar shot, and then Billy Gunn blasted him with a guitar shot, and that's what led us to this match here on SmackDown. Not really much going on in this matchup. Deborah does try to distract Billy Gunn in the early goings with her, cleavage and puppies, because that was, again, this is 1999, so this is what we're seeing. Back in the day, it doesn't work on Billy. Chyna does try to make her way to ringside, and Miss Kitty does have a guitar which she tries to give to Jeff Jarrett, and Chyna quickly snatches that and ends up smashing the guitar on Deborah, which was pretty intense for back in the day. So she lays her out pretty good. Jarrett gets distracted by this, and Billy Gunn is able to pick up the pinfall victory. And then this leads to Chyna getting into the ring and her and Billy Gunn going at it. They're jawing at each other because they both want a shot at the Intercontinental Championship. Billy Gunn makes the mistake of turning his back on Chyna, and she low blows him, and that's the end of that. We cut to a backstage interview with Lillian Garcia, who is pretty much new to WWE at this point. She's no longer with the company, so she's considered like a legend. But here she's getting her beginnings as a backstage interview and also like a ring announcer. So she's interviewing Al Snow, and Al Snow's all out of his mind, and he's full of anxiety and distraught because he misses his dog, Pepper, who has been stolen by the Big Boss Man. But Lillian informs Al Snow in this backstage interview that the Boss Man will be here with Pepper tonight. Up next, we have a triple threat tag team title match. It's Kane and X-Pac versus the Acolytes versus the Undertaker and the Big Show, who are the champions. So nothing really of note here, just two things. Undertaker's about to take a leave of absence in WWE, so he won't. I think by the end of like September for sure, I know he's not there anymore, and then he doesn't show up again until May of 2000. So I don't know. I think he's injured. I didn't follow a lot of the dirt sheets back in the day because I was still a young kid. I just followed whatever was going on TV. The internet wasn't. The internet was a thing, but it wasn't like where we were constantly on it and looking at the dirt sheets and whatnot. I know there were people that were into that stuff, but I wasn't exposed to any of that yet. So from what I could tell, and just looking back on it, it looks like The Undertaker's probably injured at this point. So in this matchup, he decides he's going to join the commentary team and not participate because he's trying to show the Big Show tough love. So the Big Show's going to go at it by himself in a triple threat tag team title match. And, Taker eventually gets to Big Show. I think he slaps him at one point during this match just to try to get him like, hey, man, what are you going to do about it? Like, I want to see what you're all about. And this gets Show pretty upset. He ends up choke slamming X-Pac and pins him for the win. And that's out of that. Big Show and Undertaker retain the tag team titles. Up next, we got the Big Boss Man who's out for the promo, who immediately calls out Al Snow. So basically, this is straight and to the point. There's no going for 20 minutes like the main event guys. This is straight to the point. Big Boss Man tells Al Snow that he's going to give him back his dog Pepper if he gives him a hardcore title shot. So what he wants him to do is Al Snow to bring out the championship and defend the title. And here's the part that makes me laugh because the Big Boss Man is the heel, right? The bad guy. And he's telling him, these are the exact words he says. He says, win, lose, or draw, he will give him the dog back. So at least he's fair, right? In what he's offering, as the bad guy. If it were me, if I lost the match, I would say, fuck that. I'm going to keep the dog, screw you. But he says that. He literally says, win, lose, or draw, I'll give you the dog back. Al Snow complies. He said, oh, yeah, no, easily. I'll give you a championship match if that's all you want. They have the match. Big Boss Man comes back. He has two entrances, which is weird. So he comes out for his promo, has the big entrance. They go to commercial. They come back, and he does his entrance again with music, which is just it's repetitive for no reason. He could have just come back. So he comes back, and he's got the dog with him, right? He's got the little Pepper Chihuahua dog, and it's got one of those masks covering his face so that he won't bite him. And then to top it all off, and this made me laugh, and it shouldn't. I'm against cruelty to animals and whatnot, and it's not like he was really hurting the dog. But he was carrying a nightstick with him because that's part of his gimmick, right? He's the law enforcement security, whatever. So he's got a nightstick on him, and he's holding the nightstick to the dog's neck as if he's going to threaten to do something to the dog. He doesn't, but it's crazy because the dog's already covered in this mask. So I don't even know how much more threatening the dog could be. And I just found that to be a little bit of a hilarious touch of having that nightstick hold up against the neck. So he gives the dog to Jerry the King Lawler, who's at ringside on commentary, and he's holding the dog. And they have their match and whatnot. Not that long of a match, and Al Snow gets distracted at one point and sees the dog and wants to go, retrieve his property. So as he's going up to get the dog, Big Boss Man comes out from the side out of nowhere, knocks him out with the nightstick, pins him 1, 2, 3, wins the Hardcore Championship, and just as I suspected, he is dastardly after all. He takes the dog back into his possession. So Al Snow is a big loser in this, because not only does he lose the Hardcore title, but he also just continues to not have his dog, and that's the end of that segment. We cut backstage. X-Pac and Kane are leaving the building. X-Pac is kind of like telling Kane, he's better off without him. He's the one that got pinned in the match. He thinks he's the weak link. And this is where we're starting to see Kane talk a bit more. So he has this thing where he screams out for X-Pac's real name. So he's like, Shawn. And it's hilarious because we haven't really heard Kane talk for a lot now. So now we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think it's hilarious at this point. We cut to a shot of Triple H and The Rock. They're separate shots of them in their locker rooms. Triple H, he's getting ready for the match. He's lacing his boots and whatnot. And they show The Rock, and The Rock's just standing there in his, nice shirt and pants, suit pants, and, dress shoes. And he's just walking around. And I'm thinking, dude, you've been crying about wanting the championship match. This is all he was doing on Monday Night Raw, was crying about how it was crap, how he wasn't the number one contender and wanted to be the number one contender. And here you are, granted the opportunity for a title match tonight, and you're just standing there walking around like, get ready, mijo, you're about to have a championship match. You're supposed to be hyped and ready to go. So I thought that was just funny that Triple H is there, taking this serious, and The Rock is just there standing, walking around. So that's what I found funny about that. Up next is the first match ever in WWE for Chris Jericho on television, that is. I'm sure he had matches in house shows and dark matches, and what I mean by that is those are matches that are taped just for the audience there in the arena. They don't show them on television or anything like that. So his first match is going to be against the Road Dogg. So again, there's continuity, there's story leading up to this matchup. So at SummerSlam, Chris Jericho and the Road Dogg got into a verbal confrontation, which led to Road Dogg getting the better of Jericho on that night. So they're having a standard wrestling match, and there's not really much going on to it, except that at some point Chris Jericho brings out a table, which it's not a no disqualification match, it's not a hardcore match, so it's really weird to see him doing this in his first match. He sets it up, him and Road Dogg go at it for a little bit more, and then Jericho eventually ends up power bombing Road Dogg through the table, disqualifying himself, and kind of saves Road Dogg as he doesn't get pinned, but it also makes Jericho look the stronger of the two by power bombing him and then putting him in the walls of Jericho. Referees having to come out and separate the two, and Jericho just gets the one up on Road Dogg, even though he technically doesn't get the win. They go to commercial and they cut back to backstage, and it's Chris Jericho and Howard Finkel. Howard Finkel is trying to be a follower of Chris Jericho. Howard Finkel is the announcer who has been the main WWE announcer for years and years and years, but they're putting them in this comedic role because they're, like I told you earlier, they're kind of transitioning to Lillian Garcia and also the new guy, Tony Kimmel, which we'll get to in just a second on that. So anyways, they have this backstage segment, and Jericho and Howard Finkel's talking about Jericho's telling Finkel, that's how you do it. The way he just handed the Road Dogg's ass, and and saying why isn't Howard Finkel being like him? He knows he's the best announcer, and what's he going to do about it? So, and he sees Tony Kimmel in the ring. They're by a television monitor, and there's Tony Kimmel getting ready to announce the next match, and Jericho's like, that should be you, man. What the hell are you doing? Go take care of him. So out goes Howard Finkel to try to get the best of Tony Kimmel, who's going to announce the match, and Howard Finkel saying I'm the best announcer, and shoves Tony Kimmel to the ground, and you think that that's going to be the end of it, but actually Tony Kimmel gets into it with Howard Finkel, so you got both these announcers going at it, and Kimmel ends up knocking Finkel out of the ring, and shows him who's boss. Again, Chris Jericho comes out to try to help Howard Finkel. to the back, and this is going to lead us to what's supposed to be the next matchup, and it's supposed to be Ken Shamrock against Val Venus. And as Ken Shamrock is coming down the ramp, you see Jericho and Howard Finkel making their way up, and Jericho and Ken Shamrock, bump shoulders, and kind of like pisses off the both of them. But Shamrock continues to go on his way, and Jericho, sends off Finkel to kind of like sick on him and leash and distract Shamrock. So he goes after Shamrock. Shamrock's like, what the hell are you doing, Finkel? Like, you want a piece of this? But, knowing he's like not really up to his level, Shamrock kind of just like, leaves it to whatever. But anyway, Jericho attacks him from behind with a steel chair and then just runs away, and that leaves Shamrock to chase off Howard Finkel and Chris Jericho, so we don't get that matchup. Up next, we have Stephanie McMahon, who's out to the ring for a promo. So on Monday Night Raw, Test came out, and by the way, he won his matchup against Shane, which allowed him to continue to date Stephanie, which what I said earlier, love her, leave her, Greenwich Street Fight. Test won that match, so he has the right to continue to date Stephanie. So he wants to take their relationship to the next level on Monday Night Raw. He came out and tried to propose to her on live television in front of the whole world. Stephanie said that she loves Test, but that she needed time to think about it. So that leads us to this segment here on SmackDown. So Stephanie comes out, and she just tells Test that she wanted the moment to be right, which is weird because this is basically the same setup there was on Monday Night Raw. So Test, says, hey, if we're going to do this, I want to do this right. And he takes out the ring and asks Stephanie to marry him. And she says yes. And it looks like they're going to be engaged. So the Mean Street Posse come out to attack Test. Those are Shane McMahon's buddies who were out earlier to try to help him out, and Triple H. So they come out there attacking Test. And Shane McMahon's out there as well, holding Stephanie back. The Mean Street Posse's beating the hell out of Test. Here comes Mankind out to assist Test and help him out. Beats up on the Posse. And then starts talking trash to Shane McMahon and says, you know what? I'm not going to be doing this entrance again, Mankind says, which is smart. So he says, let's have our match right now. So him and Shane are going at it. And they're having a standard match. It's a whatever match. But at some point during this whole thing, Triple H and Chyna put the distraction, and Triple H is able to get in a shot in on Mankind with a steel chair, and this leads to Shane McMahon winning. And this is 1999, guys, getting a big win over Mankind, who's a legitimate contender. This is Shane McMahon, the boss's son. And in 2019, today, we're still getting stuff like that, where Shane won a pay-per-view match against The Miz. He won against Roman Reigns, of all people. So I can't believe this. 20 years later, and we're still seeing the same shit from Shane McMahon. Back in the day, you could call it a shocking out of nowhere, but now it's repetitive, and it's the same thing, and it's tiring. So yeah, after all that, Shane McMahon beats Mankind, and Mankind is left to look like a schlup after Monday's losing the championship and then this matchup. We cut to backstage. Chris Jericho and Howard Finkel are still on the run from Shamrock. Jericho and Finkel are headed to their car, getting ready to leave the arena. Jericho gets in the car, and the passenger side looks like the door's locked, so Howard Finkel's not able to get in. Jericho drives away. Ken Shamrock is able to catch up, and he grabs a hold of Howard Finkel and starts shaking the hell out of him. And then, of course, Mr. McMahon, he loves his toilet humor, so he's like, what the hell? What's that smell? He's like, did you shit your pants, Howard Finkel? And then he throws him to the ground, and that's that on that. We get the toilet humor because, Vince just loves to add in stuff like that on a segment that could have been a little bit more serious, but of course they had to make it comedic. We cut to an interview with Michael Cole and Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is a sit-down interview. It's basically Stone Cold Steve Austin giving us an update on his injury, which is, I believe it's either his left or right knee, because he had a knee brace on one of his knees already. So at SummerSlam, he had the double knee pads, which was the first time we saw that. And apparently he was injured leading up to the match in real life, which, of course, again, like I told you, I wasn't into the dirt sheets. I didn't know what was going on, so I thought, Triple H might have just injured him for real. So, no, it turns out he was actually hurt in real life. It wasn't Triple H that did it. He was already hurt going into the match, but Stone Cold was going to be Stone Cold and do the match regardless. And this is basically an interview saying Stone Cold's going to be out a couple weeks, but he says Triple H has got hell to pay from when he returns, and Michael Cole even tells him, hey, Triple H is kind of taking a page out of your playbook and being all intense and doing all these, kind of dastardly things. And Stone Cold's like, that's fine with me, if he wants to steal a page. But he hasn't read the whole book, so he doesn't know what's coming. And it's just basically to hype up that Stone Cold's going away, but not for that long, as he'll probably be returning in a couple of weeks. So that's the end of that. Next, we got an evening gown match between Ivory and Tori. Ivory is the WWE Women's Champion. She defended the championship against Tori at SummerSlam and was able to win her matchup. But at the end of it, she started stripping Tori of her clothes. And again, this is 1999, so this is the kind of stuff that we saw a lot of back in the day. Tori challenged Ivory to this matchup. Tori wins the match, strips Ivory of her clothes, and Ivory's wearing the old grandma underwear and all that stuff just to make her look like a heelish fool. And this is real quick. It's a few minutes. It's totally forgettable. I could do without any of this stuff. I would prefer to just have them do a straight-up wrestling match. But this is 1999. That's what we're dealing with. Whatever. Next, we cut to a backstage interview with Lillian Garcia with Triple H in China. And it's Lillian just trying to egg on Triple H as far as the match goes with The Rock. She sounds a little bit robotic here, but I'm not gonna fault her too much because she's just starting out here. She eventually gets pretty good in the ring announcing, and then of course in the backstage segments. The ones with her and The Rock later down the line are classic. But here she sounds a little bit robotic, and China's just laying into her and just saying she needs to show the champ respect. Super quick interview just to get ready for the championship match. We cut to one final shot of Al Snow looking for his dog Pepper. He's out in the the production truck, and this is just little things that I love about WWE. It's just continuity and just continuing the story in the same episode. It's not just one segment and then they just forget about it. No, they're continuing. So Al Snow's pissed that he doesn't have his dog, so of course he's going to continue to look for him. I think he got knocked out by that nightstick in the match, if I remember, so he's not sure if the boss man took him and left with him or if the dog just left on his own, whatever. Either way, he's looking for him, and it's nice to see the continuities continue to build in this story between these two. And finally, we come to the main event of SmackDown. It's the WWE title, Triple H defending against The Rock. Shawn Michaels is the guest referee. This is a pretty good main event. We talk a lot about how WWE likes to do a lot of the same matches. We saw a lot of, Seth Rollins versus Dolph Ziggler last year. But you forget, boy, did WWE run Triple H versus The Rock to death on us when I was younger. So they feuded for the Intercontinental Championship. They feuded while they were continuing to build for the WWE title when they were both contenders. They're fighting here for the championship. And then later in 2000, they're going to continue their feud. They were just fighting time and time again. But the characters, I guess, are just so entertaining, and they find different ways to incorporate their storylines and make it different that that's what's missing from today's WWE. And that's why the matches are just repetitive, because there's not really characters. There's no depth to these guys. So it's kind of just running the same thing over and over, which is why we don't notice it back from the Attitude Era, because the promos and everything leading up to it is just so entertaining that you're okay with them facing again, because they give you reason to want to see it. So this is a pretty good match. This could have been on a pay-per-view, but they're trying to hype up this as the big network premiere of SmackDown, even though they've had the one pilot episode already. But this is the one that they need to get off the ground. Again, I forgot to tell you guys that this is the real SmackDown as far as having the entranceway. They have the oval-shaped Titantron. The entranceway is really cool. I kind of like this one more than Monday Night Raw. So they have 4 or 5 ovals as the entrance, and then to the left, and sometimes they would put to the right, is the big oval Titantron. And then, of course, the ropes are like tealish blue, kind of. So it's got a different look than Raw now. And, so the match is good. It's going, and, it's back and forth. Shane McMahon makes his way out to the ring because Shawn Michaels at one point tries to throw Chyna out of the match for interfering. And, Shane's like, how can you do that? And it's like, he's the referee. He can throw out anybody that he wants to. So Shane McMahon's out there, and they're going on and on and on. And finally, The Rock's got Triple H where he wants him, hits him with the rock bottom. He's going to go for the people's elbow. He's runs across the ring ropes. And as he's coming back, wham, Shawn Michaels hits him with the sweet chin music out of nowhere. Tells Triple H to cover him. 1, 2, 3. Triple H retains the title. And Shawn Michaels, who had been a good guy commissioner, authority figure up until this point, for some reason turns heel. Now, in hindsight, we get it. That's his best friend, Triple H. So I guess at some point they were going to reconcile. But my only issue with this and why I don't like it is because there's no follow-up on it. We don't see Shawn Michaels again for a while, for a very long time. So yeah, they follow up with Rock and Triple H, but this is Shawn Michaels doing. This should be Rock wanting to go after Shawn Michaels, not Triple H. Triple H is just doing what he's got to do to win. This should really set up The Rock versus Shawn Michaels. But at this point, Shawn Michaels has still got the injured back, so he's not really an active competitor. And he was going through some personal problems at this time. So that was why we didn't see him on TV a lot. But yeah, that's the only thing I don't like about this heel turn, is because it doesn't make any sense because they don't follow up on it. And that's something that WWE did not really, they didn't have issues with this back in the day because they really followed up on every little thing and remembered the details. But this one was just so random. I think they wanted to do it just for the shock value of it being like the network premiere. But just in my opinion, I didn't like it because there's no follow-up to it. And that's it. That's this episode of SmackDown. It was a pretty easy watch. A lot of these shows are going to be easy to watch because it's just it's a 2-hour show and everything's got to get up and going. They don't have the overrun like they do on Raw, where they get to go over their 2-hour mark, which happened a lot in the Attitude Era. But overall, good show. The introduction of Chris Jericho wrestling finally. A lot of continuation on that. Triple H establishing his dominance as the champion. Stone Cold Steve Austin's out for a while. He'll be back in a few weeks. And yeah, there's no follow-up to Shawn Michaels and The Rock. So that's my only downside, my only negative of this match. And that stupid evening gown debacle, which didn't really do anything. So that's going to do it for this episode. August 26, 1999 of SmackDown. Palace Off the Top Rope presents. We'll see you next time.